Hello and welcome to another episode of Sports and Songs Podcast. We're on season 5, episode number 32. Tonight's the Songs edition. Andy, how are you?
We are good. How about yourself?
Good. It is June 13th, 2024. Typically, our shows on the Songs edition are tours, concerts, upcoming albums, album reviews, new releases, local music. Tonight, we got an album review for you. We're going back to the 90s, little Seattle. Little Nirvana tonight, Andy.
We're on a roll with them lately.
We're on a roll with
sound.
The Seattle sound. So, Nirvana released their third studio album called In Utero. Here it is.
There it is.
I know there's lots of questions and stuff regarding this, but we'll take it here one at a time. The album cover has its own set of questions, but anyway, we'll get to that. Third and final studio album by the American rock band Nirvana. In Utero was a major commercial and critical success. And so, very good. Had the songs Heart-Shaped Box, All Apologies. And it went 5 times platinum. Sold 15 million albums worldwide. 15 million. 5 times on just the U.S. And then Cobain's death was 6 months after the album was released. Kurt Cobain died. This was released September 21st, 1993. So fall.
And Kurt Cobain dying is a whole nother episode at a different time.
Yes. We'll touch on that a little bit today.
We'll
but
do that this summer maybe, or this fall.
Yeah, so they released it in 93. So September, do you remember when this came out, or was this not a big thing for you? I know it wasn't for me.
That was that dark time in my life there, 92 and 93.
Okay. And I was not into Nirvana, so I don't remember when this came out. I remember, the songs being played. I was not a grunge guy. I could have cared, less. So it doesn't it doesn't come back to me. But it's got some Minnesota connections, as we'll get to this here with Kurt Cobain and boys. They released the singles was Heart-Shaped Box, released in August. So this was right as, school was just starting for the kids, the college kids, the high school kids. Heart-Shaped Box came out. All Apologies came out with the B-side of Rape Me, came out in December. And they were going to release Pennyroyal Tea. Pennyroyal, one word, tea. Tea is something you drink. Pennyroyal Tea was supposed to be released. They scrapped it. The death came about, and they said, we can't do it now. But they released it and re-released it, in 2014. And I didn't know this. They re-released it as a single, and it reached #1 on the now defunct Billboard Hot 100. It went to #1. Now, Nirvana broke into the mainstream with their second album called Nevermind in 1991. It was a major commercial success. And, things just really took off. So they go to get they want to work on album number 3 here. And they said, you know what, we want to go back and have a raw kind of sound. We don't want to have it too perfect. Kurt Cobain didn't like Nevermind that much because it was too polished, it was too clean, it was too commercial. It's not what he was looking for. And although it was so successful, he's like, I just didn't like the way it was recorded. So that I thought was very interesting. They got Steve Albini to work on this, and he said, "We'll do this. It's going to come off very raw, but we want to get this done, and it's going to sound very good." He also. Albini was big into the independent music scene. He did not like the mainstream, and it was very well known. I didn't know this about him. I don't know if you do, but Steve Albini loved the underground music, the independent labels. He did not like the corporate greed. He said, I'll do it, but I'm going to take a one-time fee to help you guys out, as I don't believe in royalties. Once the album is done, I want the band to collect the royalties, not me. I'll take a one-time fee. They said, well, you gotta get royalties on the production. No, I'll just do a flat fee and be done with it. He considered that immoral and an insult to the artists. And I like that, I get that. So that's Steve Albini. And so he says, Kurt Cobain says, what we need to do here, and this ties in to a lot of things in the future. We need no intrusion on this. The record label, can you send us a rough draft or two? Can you send us some songs as you're getting them done? They said no. The guys all says, we're not going to send you anything. We're not going to answer the phone. And we're going to go to a recording studio in Minnesota in a small town called Cannon Falls and go to Pachyderm Studios. I drove by there once, and it's tucked away on the kind of the hilly mountainside there in a small town, Cannon Falls. Still there today. And in fact, the Sunflower Fox and the Chicken Leg recorded there themselves.
Yep.
The local band. So they wanted to go there. They wanted to focus. Now, Kurt Cobain, who had struggled with drug addiction in the past, was focused and sober in the studio, ready to go. They didn't want any disruptions. They wanted to go there and lay out all the tracks. It was a house as well, so they could live there, rent it out for 2 or 3 weeks, lay down all the tracks, and never leave the place. There shouldn't even be a need to leave the house. There was someone there making the food and the meals, and they did not want to have any other disruption. Well, the recording was all completed in 6 days. But the only disruption a week occurred when Courtney Love arrived because she missed Kurt Cobain. She had to fly all the way to Minnesota. Says, I miss you. We've got a young daughter named Frances Bean. We miss you. Can we come and visit? And they all got done saying, you know what? We don't want any disruptions. 0 disruptions. And then she came. And so this leads to further bad or negative things, I think, down the road. But this is when this is when things this did not end too well, as we all know. But so that was a session. She got there, she created tension. This is Courtney Love now, who was in the band Hole at the time, and she started by criticizing Kurt Cobain's work. She was confrontational with everyone that was present. I mean, there was just so much tension. So anyway, they record the album, they get it done. Here are the tracks. Track listing. Serve the Servants, number 1. Serve the Servants. Very good track there as far as who's really working for who. I think that's kind of more of a political thing, and when you vote people into office and whatnot.
Kind of, yeah.
Scentless Apprentice. Next song, very good. Chris Novoselic, Dave, and Kurt all wrote that. It's based on a book that Kurt read. Kurt loved to read, and he read this book about some murdering. It was a murder novel about a scentless apprentice that was in a perfume shop or making perfume, and there was no scent to it. He liked that. Next song is Heart-Shaped Box. That was related to an actual cardboard box. I think he gave Courtney or something that you open up the top. That's all that really is, and you put a gift or something inside of it. Rape Me is the next song. Rape Me is song 4, and that is literally, Andy, it's about the record label and record labels in general.
Yes, not what you'd think it was about.
It's got nothing to do with the real terminology. They did want that to be out there, I think, to get some attention, even if it's bad or negative publicity. But it's about really being screwed over by the record label and the record company. Next song is Frances Farmer Will Have Her Revenge on Seattle. Another book that Kurt Cobain read. He also liked long titles, Andy. Long titles like this. Something, I don't like. I don't think you like them either. No. Kurt Cobain was odd. He didn't mind having these real long titles on there. And so that's another book he read. The next song is Dumb. Song 6, Dumb. Kind of has a Beatles sound to it. Song 7 is Very Ape. Song 8 is Milk It. Song 9 is Penny Royal Tea. That was a common drink for people with stomach and gastrointestinal problems and indigestion and problems with their stomach. Kurt Cobain couldn't find really anything to help his stomach issues he had over the years, and I think the song is about that. I don't think he ever had it or drank it or used it. It's a form of a poison. It's back in the day, it was a sort of something you'd drink if you wanted to have an abortion for ladies. I mean, this was some very, it's a type
nasty
of
stuff.
flowered, nasty stuff that is, I don't know if it's illegal or not, but they said the old days, the folk stories where women could have an abortion by drinking this if they couldn't get it performed by the doctor. He wrote that probably because it had something to do with his stomach. Song 10 is called Radio Friendly Unit Shifter. That's probably him poking fun once again at what they needed or what the record label wanted versus just a real song. Let's make something that, people will be friendly, radio friendly. Next song 11 is Tourette's. And so 12 is All Apologies. All Apologies. Very good. This song with the lyrics in that song would not go over well today because he covers all the different things you could be blamed for. What else can I say? Everyone is gay. I mean, Kurt Cobain nowadays would have gotten blasted in the media for all these lyrics, but they were very
at the time. He was such a visionary. Oh, he's so ahead of his time, and
so yeah,
if he was there, he'd be kicked out of the office.
Yeah, so very interesting stuff. Once again, all this is written by him. This is all Kurt Cobain. He was Nirvana, of course. The personnel was Chris Novoselic on bass, the tall, thin guy, and Dave Grohl, who later went into and started Foo Fighters after Nirvana broke up. But that was the drummer. I mean, Nirvana was not that good with their first album. They got rid of the drummer, brought in Dave Grohl for the second one, and that was Nevermind. So they went huge after that, all because of Grohl, I think. But they didn't have much say musically in the music. This was really the sound. Cobain was almost a perfectionist, although it wasn't clean recorded music. He wanted it a certain way. He had his, he wanted it to be done a certain way. He had his own ear of how he wanted to have it done, and that all took off. Like I said, 4 million copies right away. It sold 5 million overall. Now, some people say on the criticism, if it's possible for an album to sell 5 million records in the U.S. to be overlooked or, quote, underappreciated, then In Utero is that lost pearl. Do you find that to be true? I mean, when you say 5 times platinum, the songs and the albums that come to my mind are heavy hits, top songs, big albums with a lot of airplay, yeah. MTV airplay, like Bon Jovi, I think of Def Leppard, But Nirvana, the first one, Nevermind, their second album was huge. But did you know that this one went 5 times platinum? I didn't know that.
And I think 3.5 or 4 of it was based on name alone from the first album, in my opinion.
Yep. Oh, yep. So they released this. And they wanted to release. Here's the other story that I found by reading this. They wanted to release the next album that next year because Nevermind was released in 91. They released something in 92. They didn't have this ready. They said, we need a year to get it done. They put together a compilation and called it Incesticide. Released that in 92. All that was a compilation of some demos and things, not even the real next studio album. So they had a whole year to get this thing squared away and this thing figured out. And they wanted to have it, to be hitting on all cylinders. They didn't want to have it as commercial friendly as the Nevermind, although that sold so much. They still said he did not made up a lot of songs making fun of high school jocks and athletes and popular crowd. And guess who bought the album? Was those people. I mean, this ticked him off because this was always his band was always about the unpopular, the non-popular crowd is what it was. So studio, Pachyderm in Cannon Falls, Minnesota. The album length is 41 minutes, 23 seconds long. They released Heart-Shaped Box. They released All Apologies with Rape Me on the back end. Now, the one thing I wanted to get into was so they released it, they released it. The packaging talks about, I got to find it here now. The packaging. It was about the body. We talk about all these things. Kurt Cobain was very popular back in the day. The popular saying was he hated when people asked him, hey, how are you today? Or he hated when that question was, how are you today? And everyone responds with good. How are you? Good. How are you? Good. And Andy, we see this today in the real world, you run into someone. How are you? It's good. It's a fake answer, but it is what people want to hear, and it is what it is. Kurt Cobain, that's one of those things that gnawed on him, that people just can't be truthful. He always says, when someone asked him, "How are you?" he said, "I hate myself and want to die." And so that got to be the joke during the recording of this. I hate myself and want to die, as a joke. Before they named it In Utero, that was the name, the working title of this album. I hate myself and want to die. Now, keep in mind, he died later anyway. And so this all has this foreshadowing to it. But remember that it was done in jest. It was done in as a joke. The stuff that Cobain talks about in his lyrics always seems to be disturbing imagery, right? He talked about the last album was a lot of teenage angst. And now this album's talking about the rock star angst, the stuff you're dealing with, the crap you deal with, dealing now with being a rock star. Forget about trying to get there and trying to be the rock star. Now you're dealing with a whole nother element of this crap. But anyway, the cover of the album shows the transparent anatomical mannequin called a TAM, Andy. TAM. I didn't know that. But anyway, it shows the intestines in front. They added wings on the outside, but it's just basically a naked female body with some wings. I don't know what it means. I don't know what it stands for. They showed the intestines there. But I think it comes back to they don't want to leave you all these uncomfortable topics, I think, is another thing. Now, they released the 2 songs, and then by the time they released the 3rd one, they had to cancel it because Cobain suffered from a drug overdose in Rome on March 6th. This is a month before he died. Now, that overdose was some sort of a poison. Actually, he did not overdose. It was he drinking champagne. Kurt Cobain was not a big drinker, not a big drug user. He did some cocaine, but never overdosed. This was Rohypnol. Rohypnol in with his champagne, and I think this was, one could argue, a first attempt on his life. He came out and survived it, but it was not a suicide. It had nothing to do with a suicide attempt, and so that's what they called it, a suicide attempt in Rome.
Yeah,
they didn't release that 3rd single. Then the next month later, they said, you better go into some rehab for drug rehabilitation. And this is by the time, I think, in all reality here, I think Kurt Cobain was done dealing with Courtney Love. And although he didn't have a drug issue or a drug rehabilitation issue, he liked the fact of going inpatient. Here I can go and get away from it all and not have to deal with her on a daily basis. And I think that's why he said, I'm going to begin this drug rehab deal. And then a couple of weeks later, they found him dead, evidently murdered, as the second murder attempt took place and was this time successful in all likelihood. So now he's dead. Now guess what happens to the In Utero album? It went from number 72 on the charts, Andy, to number 20 to number 27. So it jumped way up. And so the week before this was on, the week before the death, it was averaging 18,000 sales each week. He died. It goes to 40,000 the very next week. And so the strange, all the strange connections here with this whole death, it certainly made people rich. This was at the same time, too, he turned down going to Lollapalooza. That was the big thing in Chicago. And Courtney Love wanted him to do that. Very upset that he wanted to stay home. End the band. He wrote a note. I want to quit the group, quit the band, focus on my child, and focus on things. That was the one later looked at and allegedly found to be a suicide note. But it sold many, many. This was ranked the 7th best album of all of the 90s. Would you agree with that, Andy?
No, I don't think I'd put top 25.
Now, I think if you looked at grunge or Seattle music, yes, I would agree with that. But the 90s had so many other good music, so many other good bands that were there. Their first album, Nevermind, I could see it being ranking up there. But just because rock and roll was going through their phasing out period does not mean there was good music in the 90s, as you can certainly attest to. There was a lot there going on. Now, this is also ranks as number 35 on the 500 greatest albums of all time. I think that's very high.
Yeah.
It's included into 1,001 albums you must hear before you die. Top 30 best grunge albums of all time. I think that's fair. Top 30 grunge only. And that was it. I mean, that's really the album. It had the Minnesota Connection is what I like, of course, there with Pachyderm. I didn't know that until I got into the band later and researched them and got into some of their music and got into some of the band members themselves. And I couldn't believe the connection here with Minnesota. You know, Courtney Love had a band named Hole, and her bassist was Kristen Pfaff, also from Minneapolis, a Minnesota connection. They were, you know, a lot of, you know, she was in Janitor Joe. Pfaff was before she moved out to LA and joined up with Courtney Love, but there's a lot of Minnesota influence there. They played a record store, Andy. A record store in Minneapolis. They got together and they played Nirvana. Yep. I didn't, you know, I was not even aware of that. Yep. So they really put out 3 albums. The first one was called Bleach with the old drummer.
Yep.
Nevermind came in with Dave Grohl. Huge.
Yep. That's
the baby swimming in the front with the dollar, chasing the almighty dollar, the nude baby. Yep. And then now you get in Utero, the woman naked, once again, nude with angel wings. A lot of things going on here. But anyway, there was a lot of good songs. There are some throwaway songs on this album. There's some very good ones as well. It's one of those, though, that if you're into it, it makes a little more sense. You read the lyrics, it makes a little more sense. You know the background on Cobain, it makes a little more sense. But I thought it was good.
They say he didn't like attention. He liked to just kind of be a hole in the wall. But if you don't like attention, why are you playing at record stores?
So I don't know if they had a deal or something there, but they did play, yes. And
you don't like attention, don't play at the MTV Music Awards. Just say no, don't do it.
And at the end, they did the acoustic. You know, they had the big acoustic set unplugged, and is that the one that really started all the other unplugged?
Some of them. Those around that time.
Yeah. At the time, it was very interesting stuff, but. Very interesting. But yeah, a lot of Minnesota connections on this. That's all I've got for Nirvana in Utero. In Utero. Right.
Here we go.
Perfect.
Factoid. Schools with music programs have an estimated 90.2% graduation rate compared to schools without music education at 72.9%. So there. Take that.
Well, it is. We like to educate here.
Cyndi Lauper. Yeah, that's why we're here.
I saw this. I just saw this today.
December 4 at Target Center. Now, I want to say this about Cyndi Lauper. What the hell are you talking about Cyndi Lauper for? She is so talented, in my opinion, it hurts. Say what you will about her voice or her personality or this or that. Her one song, True Colors, lots of people have done covers of that. Girls Just Want to Have Fun, you hear that in a lot of commercials. But my favorite song of hers, which I've loved since day one, Time After Time, off her first album.
Yes.
That song, of all the songs done in the 80s, that was the most covered song of anyone in the 80s, was Time After Time. By Cyndi Lauper.
Really? With all those Journey and Styx and Foreigner songs out there?
All Time After Time. And it's one of those songs you got to really listen to. You know, kind of like in White Man. You don't hear Jimmy. You listen to Jimmy, but you don't hear him. You got to hear this song. Do the homework. I'm really thinking of doing a Cyndi Lauper, She's So Unusual album review, because that's so out of our wheelhouse, but, you know, might be a special album review one or something like that. You know, so
that would be good. Very talented. Now, why is it Farewell? Has she been touring recently?
Yeah, and you know, she does those commercials for her skin eczema stuff and that.
Eczema, okay.
Yeah, and she's got to be in her 60s. You know,
yes.
We're not getting younger, Dan.
So Farewell, I can see that being her last one, but I didn't know she was actively, you know, even touring.
She might have been. I think she was doing the It's So 80s and It's So 90s tours and stuff like that, but nothing where she was touring. I think she was getting good enough pop off of those, good enough draws. She's like, okay. And I'm really surprised she's selling Target Center. That it's not going to be at the Ordway or something like that.
Yeah, this is not a small arena, and like you said, for her age, she's got a lot of followers, a lot of fans still that always have loved her music. But Target Center, I mean, you're looking to try to sell 18,000 tickets, and I wouldn't be surprised if she does sell it all. But
probably 8,000 will be radio stations and companies promoting. So there's half your battle right there.
Interesting.
Foreigner coming up here down at there, and they say get it for Dad. $45.50 tickets for Dad for Father's Day. For Foreigner, that's okay, but getting your dad tickets to go see Lita Ford on Father's Day.
Yes, that is
sweet Jesus. You want to be Dad's favorite? You hook him up with these tickets right here.
There you go. I like it. I like the way they're marketing that.
Yes. August 30th, and then October 12th. August 30th in Fargo, October 12th in Minneapolis. Styx with our friend Tommy Shaw. So that should be a good concert right there. Styx, one last go around here. 38 Special. They got concerts in the park down in Canterbury. This is one of them there. 38 Special for those of you into that type of music. August 2nd. Judas Priest is coming back there, Dan. September 24th in Rochester. If you missed him here before, make the trip down to Rochester. You can see him.
Okay.
There you go. There's that one. Another friend of the show, Cinderella's Tom Kiefer. Mankato Rib Fest, August 2nd. So there you go with that one with LA Guns.
Tracy Guns will be there. And this Rib Fest is really doing well, I think, over the years. They've gotten that to be a pretty big event. I
have to feel bad for we saw him after the show. He was just done. After the show at Medina, he's going to be playing outside in that leather in August. Lots of water, Tom. Lots of
water, Tom. And stay hydrated there, Tom.
Yes. I know. I'm just dropping this little tidbit we got on our page, and I'm not going to get into the whole story about Richie Sambora and John Bon Jovi, if they'll ever get back together or this or that. We talked about it a while ago. I have finished watching the John Bon Jovi documentary on Hulu. A lot of stuff I didn't know. Some stuff I kind of thought I knew. A lot of stuff was like, no kidding. Lost a lot of respect for John Bon Jovi on this documentary. I did.
Yeah, okay.
As a person, he's still a great talent. I'm not taking that. A little bit of him as a person. Richie Sambora, I gained a ton of respect for. Some of the other guys in the band, David Allen, David Bryan, Tico Tech, Alec John Such, opinion didn't really change much on them. Lost a little respect for John Bon Jovi, gained a ton of respect for Richie Sambora. And the reason I say this, I'm not getting this more, I have a big announcement, Dan.
Yes.
You're sitting down?
Yes.
Gonna start a new side show coming up here where it's gonna be called Battle Within the Band.
Okay.
I got the idea from this one because when Bon Jovi was doing their thing and John went and did his solo album and Richie Sambora did his solo album within the same year. So that's what our episode will center on, is a band where they all went and did solo albums, how around each other, same time frame, compare the two. Some other ones I got in mind are David Lee Roth and Van Halen. When he left, okay, how was that first Van Halen album after him? Stuff like that.
Revolving
it's gonna be my opinion of which one was better, but that's what it's for. Yeah. So that's kind of a show coming up for the fall, our fall season. Stuff like that. So if you got any suggestions of bands you'd like to see, like I said, here, John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora. David Lee Roth and Van Halen, Lou Gramm and Foreigner, stuff like that. If you have any
Black
suggestions,
Sabbath.
the Sabbath ones. I mean, I could do the Kiss Best of Solos, or even Ace and Vinny when they all left. How it was, their solo albums. Paul McCartney and Wings against John Lennon's solo stuff. Lots of things like that. But every 2-3 weeks, do an episode, just kind of comparing the albums. Not really saying who's better or worse, just here's what happened. Maybe one did better in sales, but the other one had better songs, stuff like that. We'll get into that better. But
good topic.
Coming this fall on this podcast is our first little spin-off show, if you will. So there we go. But that's all I got, man.
Awesome stuff. So that is interesting. Now, I do encourage those out there. Here we go, Songs Edition, to learn more about the whole the Kurt Cobain untimely death and those kinds of things. You really have to look into Danny Goldberg, who was the manager of the band, and his wife was Rosemary Carroll, a high-ranking attorney. And she was the one at first when it came out. When she looked at it, she goes, "This suicide note is written by two different people."
And that's another shows we have coming up, people, in the fall is rockumentaries and sportsumentaries on stuff like this.
Things like that.
We'll cover the Kurt Cobain thing. We'll cover, the steroids in the 80s in baseball, or Colin Kaepernick in football. We're going to do other stuff like that coming in the fall. Just
lots of topics surrounding these things, and what they said back in the day versus what they say now, and who's alive now versus who's dead now, and all these things. But there certainly were a lot of
settled. Smoke is settled. Were they right? Were they wrong?
There were a lot of suicides and overdoses and whatnot. This one is a very interesting story, though. That's all I've got for Nirvana in Utero. Pick it up, listen to it if you get a chance, and then. Thanks, Andy, with the upcoming tours and concerts.
That's all we got, folks.
All right, have a good one. Thank you. See you next week.